Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cinema Savvy, and we are here today to talk about Cobra Kai seasons 1 and 2. This is a video that pretty much since the beginning of these retro reviews that we started with Karate Kid, we started with Rocky. We knew that we were going to move to Karate Kid. We were going to time it effectively to get all of these done, and it's been pretty much down to the wire. I'm not going to lie. In anticipation for season 3 of Cobra Kai, which is coming to Netflix on January the 1st. We'll be doing an announcement of that at the end of this, but suffice to say, we may have had early access. But before we get on to that, we wanted to do a catch-up on this thing. So we're just going to group seasons 1 and 2 together. We will split the review in half. So we will start with a specific discussion on season 1 and then move into season 2. We have kind of binged these all together. So it is very difficult to sort of like talk about where one ends and one begins. And we'll get into our talk about our first times watching it and everything like that, because it's been really good fun actually the last couple of days. I'm very, very excited about this episode. Since we started Karate Kid, this was the one that I wanted to get to, Cobra Kai. Not just because I wanted to talk about it on the channel finally, but there was so much hype built up around this thing, especially like not just like the hype that I told you about, but like just in general conversation that you hear people talking about this show. So I'm really interested to hear your take on it as well and to finally get it out there on the channel. But before we jump into the discussion, which I don't know how long this discussion is going to go on for with 2 series, just over to you for the socials, and then we'll dive straight in.
Absolutely, guys. As we always say, the best way to find out when we're going to do our videos is finding us on social media. Of course, this is TV. This is seasons 1 and 2. So we want you guys commenting along with us today. Let us know your favorite episodes, your favorite characters, your favorite moments. We're going to go through both seasons in a catch-up. We will not be saying anything at all to do with season 3, not even predictions, not even stuff from trailers. This is out of it. So if you're staying away, you've got absolutely nothing to worry about. We're only talking about seasons 1 and 2. And if you are enjoying these films, if you do like, not Karate Kid, of course, if you like the Karate Kid, if you like Cobra Kai, then do hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot of other videos we've done this month. We've also got the season 3 videos that are going to be coming your way as well. Because, as Chris said, they've pulled back that release date. It's now New Year's Day, not the 8th of January. Unfortunately, in the nicest way possible, it made no difference to us because we may have had early access to it. In any other time, we'd probably be buzzing. But this time I was like, wow, it's still cool. But it's very cool. And as someone that's new to this is going to be a really fun discussion, actually, because we have had an absolute whale of a time watching these together, which I guess we'll get into. But if you want to find out our socials, then find us on Facebook, Cinema Savvy, Twitter at cinema_savvy. That's again when we announce all of our content, what we're going to be doing. And we have a link to TeePublic in the description below. But yes, Cobra Kai season 1 and 2. We're going to kickstart with season 1 as we've done all these Karate Kid reviews. And I'm going to tell you all the same thing. I had not seen this until 2 days ago. But what I will say about my first viewing, and even before that, actually, a couple of my close friends are really into Cobra Kai. So this is a series that I've been made aware of before it was on Netflix, when it was YouTube Red, now YouTube Premium, whatever they want to keep changing their servicing to. But this was like, oh, they're doing a Karate Kid sequel, but it's on YouTube, and it's not rudely, it's on YouTube, but it kind of was like as their first streaming show. And thank God Netflix picked up the rights, because I think it's probably helps push it to the level it's going to be at for the next year or two. So I went into this, I said, I'm going to watch the Karate Kid films, then I'm going to do Cobra Kai. There's a season 3 coming out. I'm going to binge them all together because it's brand new to me. And was it Sunday night at 11 p.m.? We unofficially were in sync. Put episode 1 on. Episode 10 finished at 3:56 a.m. A whole season in a sitting.
And it went by so quick as well. That was the thing. Like, you look at the time, you're not even conscious of it until you're not even aware of the time. You're not even looking at the clock until that final episode's finished. It's like, oh, we were here for quite some time, but you don't realize it. We didn't even watch the credits to each episode. It's just next episode, next in typical binge watching fashion. And fair play to you, my friend. Like, and to me as well. Like, we got through this thing. Well, you watched all of season 2. I didn't have time to, unfortunately, go through all of season 2. I do remember it, but you got through 3 seasons of Cobra Kai in record
28
time.
hours.
28 hours. I mean, that's it all.
There was like tweets in the middle of the night, and I was like, "Oh, I'm back at work today." And then like my manager's in my story from like 3 a.m. like done it again, but it was all good. There's no issues there. But yeah, and that's the thing. I love binging TV, and we always say TV is something we don't really get to do. I know this is off tangent, that when you do get to binge telly, it's always phenomenal. I don't think I've ever done. I feel like if anyone could see bags under my eyes, it's probably actually because of this. It's one of them where it just flowed. It's what you said. It just flows. All 3 seasons, actually. That's what I'm going to say. And normally with telly, like if you binge, you can get 2 or 3 done. And it's like, okay, these are long, these are drama-y. I need a bit of time between episodes. This is like, no, just keep going, keep going. Like it's good enough to keep going. It's nothing over your head. There's nothing devastating as a sort of initial influence with it. It's just that I want to see what happens next, and that's the same thing over and over. And I think that's testament to the show. As my first viewing type thing, I know I've kind of jumped all over the place there and given some initial thoughts, but what a way to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to pretend this is something that it's not in terms of my first viewing with this thing, because I'm a relative newcomer to this as well. I haven't been there since the start of this thing, 2018 when this was first on YouTube Red. And I certainly haven't been here since the beginning of the original Karate Kid, because that came out in 1984, for God's sake. So, but this series in particular, Series 1, I started in the first lockdown that we had in the UK this year. I think I probably would have started it around the tail end of March, maybe into April. But it is one of those shows that I think that since Netflix has taken it over, it has had this resurgence in the public eye. I've seen a lot more people on my personal social media accounts watching it, going through it themselves, sharing scenes, sharing moments. And everyone knows my love for not just the Karate Kid, but just sort of like 80s theme stuff in general. So for ages, I've had people recommending me Cobra Kai. And, I always say this on the channel, when any number of people are watching something at any given time or keep constantly recommending something to me, I don't know if it's the narcissist in me. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's my stubborn nature, but I always stay away from it. It's this insane hype that's generated around a TV show or a film or whatever happens. I'll get to it in my own time. And there was no better time than lockdown. I mean, I think a lot of people were going to streaming services, rewatching films, catching up on TV. And I thought, you know what, now is the right time. And I think it was within 2 or 3 days, I had seasons 1 and 2 watched. I have almost beaten that record now, doing this the last couple of nights. And I from the first episode, I fell in love with this thing. This was... I don't want to put hyperbole on it, but I think this is definitely one of the best soft reboots, continuations, after X amount of years since the original, of any franchise I've ever seen, let alone a YouTube Red series on Karate Kid. This is like so much better than it has any right to be. And, obviously we're not going to talk about the latest series, but just in general, even just from Series 1 and 2, the direction they take certain characters in, there is a maturity there. There's a clear love there for the original. But there's enough new stuff there to bring newcomers in. But I think if you are like an original fan or you have seen the original films, I think you are going to glean a lot more from this. There are flashbacks in these series that are particularly emotional. And I don't want to say it's on the same tier as Rocky, but in its own little world, in its own little Karate Kid world, it's almost there. It's weird how both have had this, both sporting franchises stem from the same director originally, have had this, this continuation in modern day, and, this new generation of people coming in, but still being very much tethered to the original. There was actually a video that came out on YouTube, and I've got to assume that the writers of this thing, or whoever organized this thing, took inspiration from it. So this is a video from 5 years ago. The video on YouTube is called The Karate Kid, Daniel is the Real Bully. And it's by a channel, or a person, called J. Matthew Turner. It currently has about 13 million views. And in a 4.5-minute video, he highlights how Daniel LaRusso is the bad guy and goes through the entire first Karate Kid film and paints Johnny Lawrence as this misunderstood character, the real hero of the franchise. I've got to assume that the writers of this thing watched that video. And after watching that, I mean, I don't know if this guy got any credit for it, for his video essay that he made on YouTube, but there are a lot of similarities there. But it's just such an interesting premise to start with, because, we may as well jump straight into the original cast. Well, sorry, like the returning cast. Having and framing your series from the perspective of the villain, I don't know. It's probably been done before, but it's just done in such an interesting way. And inherently, it is Johnny's story. I'd say definitely season 1, Johnny and Daniel's story, and it keeps its focus where it needs to be. But just in terms of recontextualizing that stereotypical 80s bully, a character that we never really paid much mind to in the first Karate Kid film. He was just that antagonist, that antagonistic role in that first film, to completely inject new life into him and just give us a whole change of scenery and change of pace and attitude to him. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, and this is where I like our differing sort of, I guess, approaches to the series. When I'm still quite new to Karate Kid, I went into the rewatches saying, okay, Cobra Kai is this series that happens however many years later, but I now know that the subplot's going to be that it's the villain's point of view. And it's trying to think of stuff that's done that before. The only thing I can think of, there will be many that's probably done it. There's a Battlefront 2 video game, Star Wars. They spent 9 months doing a marketing scheme, and now you get to play as the villains, and they turn as the good guys after 10 minutes. So maybe because I was worried that Cobra Kai would do the same thing in season 1, but no, it was fascinating because it's a character piece, but I think you're able to add so much more weight to it by having another point of view. Because you've had Daniel, I guess, for the original trilogy, you get these moments where you sympathize with Johnny, these moments where Johnny is this, like, you feel there's a bit more to him, but Daniel's the hero, it's his story, he's the character. And that's so drilled in. And that reverse sort of psychology in season 1 works so well for it. It's how did he react? How was it to him? They mentioned the illegal kick. He gives talks across the season about his relationship with Daniel, that he doesn't want anything from him, and he's become this loser. He's become this alcoholic. He's not got a shave or anything. He's losing his job, and it's such. I don't want to say it's Darren depressing, but it's kind of like, wow, like this kid didn't like that match did. I know he keeps reinforcing that it's the match that ruined his life. Granted, it was probably more adult choices, but it's that key message where to him, if he'd have won that match, then he would have, without a doubt, have had a very different life to what he did have. And I really like that they tried something new by doing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's really hard without saying too much because we're trying to keep it to season 1. But again, as someone relatively new to it, I think it makes it more interesting. And now I want to go back and watch that first one again to see if I pick up on any other things, because in true Karate Kid fashion, the series opens up with the ending of the first film, and throughout the season, when whether a character or a moment happens, they're not afraid to bring in the old footage, because also while it's a new series, it's also there's going to be some people watching this that have probably never seen these films. So being able to bring in old footage is a really nice way of doing it, and it re-jogs the memory, I guess, for some big revelations and whatnot. But I think this is one of the best soft reboots. You mentioned the comparisons with Creed. I did sit there watching this actually thinking I wonder if Creed could have been a TV series now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not that, maybe part of the reason this was green, it was off the back of Creed, who knows, but it is that the two big sports franchises getting their resurgence sort of X amount of decades later and doing it in a completely different step of not having the main character as the leading actor and him taking a supporting role. I guess there's a lot of comparisons there. But Johnny's great in this. I think he immediately becomes one of the most interesting characters because we don't get an awful lot from him, especially the second film. He's in that opening scene. He has kind of closure, but ultimately I always thought, was he going to come back in the third one for revenge? But he never did. So that's why I liked this approach, that he's going back to his roots to try and get out of his struggling adulthood. And I thought it was a fascinating concept for a show idea.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things about it is as well, I haven't seen all of William Zabka, the guy who plays Johnny Lawrence. I haven't seen him in anything else outside of the original 2 Karate Kid films and this, really. I'm sure he's done a bunch of other stuff, but this is definitely his most sort of walk away role, his most famous role. I just love that we're seeing these actors, and we'll get onto the character of Kreese towards the end of the review. Martin Kove and just Ralph Macchio, just bringing all these people back and giving them this material to work with, and just giving them, just to see them working again and to see them, in the limelight again. It's fantastic. Yeah, you mentioned, it starts with that ending of the first one, which is the perfect framing device. And it's a beautiful transition as well, where you see him knocked out on the mat and then you cut and he's sort of in bed, just in a horrible, grotty apartment, not keeping himself well and everything like that. It frames it perfectly. And you see that the effect that has had on him. I don't want to sort of get into the Last Jedi thing, but I think there are comparisons there with that sort of depressive, that's more like a protagonist, but in this one it's the same thing. He's just sort of given up. He's just sort of living life. He's filled with anger and regret and everything that happened there. And he's just a guy that's made a lot of bad decisions. And that as as a protagonist for us in the Cobra Kai. It's a really interesting way to take it forward. And you are rooting for him. And because it's almost like that thing, walk a mile in someone else's shoes. When he is in the driver's seat and you are just following his story, you do naturally you gravitate towards his problems and the things that he needs to work through. And you want to see him become a better man. And that's not just in series 1, across all the series of Cobra Kai. And then obviously the opposite side to that, you have Daniel LaRusso, who is the complete polar opposite. He has made a success of himself. He's got a beautiful family. He's got his own car trading business, car selling business, an amazing house. He's living in the lap of luxury, essentially. He's made it. And as a result of that, that kind of adds fuel to the fire for you rooting for Johnny more, because as an audience, we root for the underdog. And this is kind of an underdog story in many ways. It's not just from the newer cast, who we'll talk about in a second. Fundamentally at the forefront, it is Johnny. So as an underdog story, you're rooting for him. And when we see Daniel, we know that we love Daniel because we watched the original trilogy. And in that first film, of course, in that moment at the All Valley tournament at the end, when he wins, it's the tearjerker moment. It's that Rocky moment. It's fantastic. You're glad to see him win. But in this, it completely recontextualizes everything. And I don't say you hate Daniel, because he's fine, but he's more brash, he's more arrogant, and those are all qualities that you kind of pick up on more now. But then again, it still feels like a natural progression from how his character acted and how he was in that original trilogy. It doesn't feel like it's come out of left field. It does feel like that's what Daniel would become. Like when he gains some success, he would be big-headed.
Yeah, and that's I think with Daniel is a really good entrance point as well. Obviously, we don't have Mr. Miyagi in this series, and when you take him pre-Mr. Miyagi in the first film, he's the arrogant kid starting fights. He wants to do this. He's trying to get on people, and Mr. Miyagi kind of obviously teaches him karate, but he's also the one teaching him life lessons. And I think that's a really big thing that these series do go through. That some of the best moments in this series is Daniel essentially remembering to the past when he's thinking of the lessons. Certainly in episode 5 of season 1, when we got the whole dojo and everything, and obviously they dedicate it to, at the end of the episode, it feels as if that he would go off and be successful because he's had some of these important life lessons, but also it was the way he was going to be. He is arrogant and he knows he's better than Johnny. Even the opening scene where when the first scene when they meet, and he's like, oh, this is the guy that kicked your ass. And he's been arrogant and laughing about it. That's the Daniel we've seen in the Karate Kid films. It's just that he was politely restrained, I guess is a really good way of saying it, by Mr. Miyagi. Because obviously in Karate Kid 3, he does go off and be a Cobra Kai, and you get that side of him properly, which we spoke about in the review. And there are moments of this, certainly in the first 2 seasons, where his wife is the one that has to bring him back to reality. And I think that's a really good dynamic too, that he isn't perfect. He thinks he is, and he wants to be, and he's had a very good life, but he is still rooted in issues. And I think that's what makes him more interesting as a character as an adult, because he hasn't got the answers he thinks he would have. And I think to get that, they're like yin and yang, aren't they? Cobra Kai is the dark side, Miyagi-Do is the light side, and you've got the instructors, you've got the students, obviously jumping into both seasons, but it all comes at the core of it. Is that there? Another phrase you kept saying when we did the known reviews was like it's like a coin. And they're both I've done. That's exactly what these two are. And I think had this show have been about Daniel and Cobra Kai's back and he's training people, now I'm going to have to come back and stop them, that would be just so boring. And it really wouldn't work. But by giving us that villain point of view, you're introducing us to all these new characters, especially the kids that are getting bullied as well. It's a really smart way. What looks like, the 4th season has been confirmed. It was confirmed ages ago. The fact that they've been able to get 4 seasons in with this concept, and I think there's been a big plan in place where they have been writing stuff. Even the final scene of season 1 sets up season 2 big time, and obviously season 2 has a cliffhanger ending. This is a show that isn't doing it one series at a time. There is a big picture, and they are always writing towards it. And I think everything they've done with precision, which is a really key thing.
Yeah, and that was going to be what I was going to talk about next, was the writing and just how solid and mature the writing is. Now, don't get me wrong, like the concept of Karate Kid, it's not Shakespeare, but just the maturity that they're able to go into with some of these characters, taking characters in a direction where I never thought they'd go, or scenes discussing things, seeing these characters again just exchanging dialogue in the way that they do. And you mentioned that like Johnny and Daniel, two opposite sides. And there are multiple moments, not just throughout season 1, but season 2 as well, where there's almost a moment of reconciliation there. And you want to see them reach that reconciliation, but circumstances is this like the constant like tittle tattle between the two of them, and one will screw the other one over, so the other retaliates, and you understand why they're retaliating, but it's just this constant battle that keeps going on. And of course it keeps going on because this is set like 30 years after the original, which is kind of funny in itself, that how this one karate tournament in 1984 has shaped these entire characters' lives, not just Johnny and Daniel, but all the other characters as well that we see return around. It's kind of funny in that way. But I was just checking the writers out for this thing. It's John Hurwitz and Hayden Schlossberg, who are most famous for writing and directing the Harold and Kumar movies.
No way. Sorry,
yes,
I kept making references to that.
I know you did. I just found it out. Yeah. I've never seen the Harold and Kumar films, so I can't talk about the quality of those films, but I've got to imagine that this is night and day compared to Harold and Kumar films, right?
Harold and Kumar is one of the funniest trilogies I've seen in a very long time. That has blown my mind. You could not imagine them thinking they're the same, except one character that's a spitting image of one of the actors. That's throwing me off track. Yeah, no, it has. It makes me want to watch them again now. Right, sorry. I'm going to
possible retro review in the future. Let's talk about the new cast as well, then, because as good as I love that they keep those old characters at the forefront, though. That's a big thing for me, and that's a big thing why I think this is a successful series. But it can't be, unfortunately, as much as I'd like it to be, it can't always be about the older characters as well. You've got to bring some new blood into this. You've got to inject some new life into the franchise. And they absolutely do with some solidly written characters. Now, I'm not going to lie. I am more interested in seeing Johnny on screen, Daniel on screen, Kreese on screen, and other characters. That's just the nostalgia in me. But the main character, I would say, out of the new cast is definitely Miguel, who is this underdog, who is the one that we focus on the most. He is almost like our Daniel LaRusso for season 1 of Cobra Kai. He is picked on at school. We see the relationship struggles with him and everything at school. It's all the kind of, that's the more teen movie kind of stuff, which that first Karate Kid film was. And I think it's an important element to still have in this. But I think he's played fantastically. And not just that, but I think that, him and Johnny have fantastic chemistry on screen together. And it is that father and son bond again. We have Miguel, who, did they specifically say what happened to his dad? Is it just like a broken down relationship, or? Yeah,
but I think when Carmen talks more in season 2, obviously, as you mentioned, similar to Daniel, he's moved town, he's with his mum, he's not got anyone else, and he's looking for that person to support him. And I think we don't know specifics of it, but my guess is the dad was either a drug dealer or a gangster. Off the backstories she tells across the episodes when she wants to mention him, it's obviously it's something that's in the past and must stay in that past. And I think that's what I quite like about him. That certainly in season 1, it's okay. Here is the Daniel LaRusso for this Karate Kid soft reboot. Here's our new Daniel LaRusso, but he's getting trained by Cobra Kai. And that's an interesting concept. And obviously, season 2 switches, and we'll get into the season 2 stuff, because the beauty of TV is that for a film, you're constricted to 2.5 hours. Granted, this series is 5 hours in theory at a time. They're able to point to things they might do in the future. Is he going to show no mercy and lose some of that Karate Kid training? Is he going to go against his master? And certainly, season 1, by the time you get to the All Valley tournament, he's a completely different character. To the point, he's also lost his braces. And oh man, when we get to talk about that finale, because I thought the writing of these characters, if he had just been the kid that got bullied and turned popular but still remained like a nerd, I think that would have been really boring. I think because it's TV, they can try and do someone, they can make him edgy. Do they make him over the top? No, we get that in one of his obviously best friends, who gets a far bigger role in season 2, which is he's Lip in season 1, isn't he? And Hawk in season 2 with sound effect. But I think that from the new characters, sorry, there's come by name. Favorite new character is Miguel. Least favorite is Sam. I think it's a good way to talk about Sam, the daughter of Daniel LaRusso, and it was meant to be a big plot twist at the end of episode 1 that she was in the car that smashed him up, and they didn't really want to build off that too much. But I liked her more in series 1, and then in series 2 they kind of okay, it's going to become that we'll use the word CW show a lot because it does feel very much like the second season.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she's far more interesting in season 1, setting things up for season 2. And then her arc, I don't think it's just down to her in season 2 isn't as strong. But for season 1, I don't think there's any, especially the younger actors that overstay their welcome. I think they're all perfectly written up. I think, as we said earlier, they've got this big plan in progress for the future seasons. And I think season 1, they nailed the writing of every single one of you because you either align with some of them or you don't align, you sympathize with them. And then the next year, you're not going to sympathize with them. They write each character so well. They don't feel like carbon copies of one another either. It would be so easy. Okay, here's a Cobra Kai class. Similar to the first film, you've got the 4 henchmen, and then you've got Johnny. Whereas in this one, it doesn't feel like Miguel's got henchmen. It feels like each character is a character around him. They're not there for the sake of it. They all have arcs they're going to develop at different points.
Yeah, and what I like about it is there's that clear divide. They draw that line in the sand, and it's either you're on one side or you're on this side. And the kids, and especially Sam, it's like this gray area where they're trying to just bring peace between the two of them, but they also inadvertently end up choosing sides themselves, and we see that throughout series 2, definitely. I'll completely agree with you in that I think that I've never been keen on her character, but she was definitely stronger in season 1. I'm wondering if that's because season 1 was completely new. The dynamics were there. When it was more of that, she was going on dates with Miguel. There's a bit of the teen drama there. It felt more in that same vein as that first movie, where that did have a place in the story. But then when we get into season 2, this is probably one of my criticisms of season 2. I still do like season 2, and it still does a lot of great things, but I think that season 1 nailed it, and to a slightly less degree, season 2. And I think the problem is that I don't want to talk about season 2 too much, just because, we are going to naturally move on to that, but it does get into that sort of like teen melodrama a little bit too much for my liking. I still think Johnny and Daniel are at the forefront, but I think there's a more equal balance in series 2. Sorry, between that older cast and the newer cast, and the sort of the relationships and the backstabbing and who kissed who and who saw what. And it's just like, I don't really care about all of this stuff. But then again, it is set up. It is good setup, and it does set things up for the future and the rivalries and everything like that. But her character's fine. We haven't got this character on the list to talk about, and that kind of says everything you need to know about the character. But Daniel LaRusso does have a son as well, who is just there. And the thing is, like, whenever his character's there, I love his character because his character's an absolute son of a bitch. He's this horrible, ignorant, lazy arsehole of a son who's just a complete waste of space. All he does is just eat snacks constantly in game. He's the complete mirror opposite to anyone in that family, and he's just there. He contributes nothing to the plot. He's just a bit of a dick, but I don't know why. I just kind of like his character every time it cuts to him.
It's the quintessential rich, when you like, it's like the rich kids at school. Like, there's always one of them's obsessed with gaming that's chubby and doesn't care about anything else, and it is that you can tell deeply that the father is disappointed. Not that they ever make an episode of it or delve into it too much. I thought, they're going to develop this kid in future seasons? Absolutely not. He is there to eat donuts, give abuse, and play PlayStation. And I love him in his scenes. You don't get too much of him, which I think it works. We basically the adult version of him in season 2, but we'll get to Stingray later on. He's one of the shining lights of the entire show. I'm trying to think what else. We could talk about Daniel's wife, I think, to tie off the LaRussos. Yeah. Now, we've had this discussion. You always said to me that when you think of Cobra Kai, you think he's had 3 girlfriends in 3 films. Are they going to pick any of them, chuck them in this film? In the series. And you were telling me that nope, they went with someone new, a new character. I love the fact that it's not one of the girlfriends. She's a completely new character, and I think she's played well. She's got a more interesting arc. She works with him at the sales shop, but they established that she's not there because it's his wife. She is a very well-written character. We get more from her, and she's not this... It's not really a criticism of the original films because it's how they were sort of 80s, 90s. When supporting characters of the girlfriends, they very much have that very stereotypical samey role. And you think, okay, is this going to be the mother where she's just there to smile and have fun? But no, she gets involved heavily in this show. And I think the more time we get with her, the more enjoyable she becomes. And I think there will be that conversation that, was Daniel, should they have brought one of the other girlfriends back? The way it is in season 1, I don't think so. I think it would have been too easy to have, look, we've not seen you for 30 years. Why did you come back now off screen between the years? What were you doing? I like the fact that it was just easy to have a clean slate. Say, no, he's a settled down family man and he has a wife. They do make jokes in the first few seasons. Oh, I had a girlfriend and then I had another one and then I had another one. So they do play it on the nose, but I really like his wife and I think she's one of the fun characters.
But I do love that scene that you mentioned there, where he just kind of goes like a laundry list of all the girls that he met in like the trilogy. It's where Sam is having just this, teen problems, like my boyfriend, this boyfriend, does he like me? Does he not like me? Just relationship woes as you have when you're a teenager. And it's a nice heart-to-heart moment, I think, between father and daughter. And he says that this may seem like a big deal right now. And of course it does feel like that. But in the grand scheme of things, and he's got that added perspective, I had all these people and life moves on. And I think that's a big theme of the story. But Amanda LaRusso, I'm glad they went with a new character. And I think she's a very well-written character. I really like her character. And I think that they feel right for each other. It is the perfect spouse, husband and wife with each other. She's supportive. She's independent. They share this business together. And you just can tell that they're in each other's corner. They've got each other's backs no matter what. And I really like that dynamic to it. As you mentioned, it would have been so easy for them to bring someone back from the previous films, but I like that it is something new because, as I said, the nostalgia is very nice when we do see items, places, flashbacks to the previous things. Now, usually in anything else, when that's done too much, I would be like, oh, it's the member berries thing. When we were talking about Mandalorian, we talked about that some of those episodes can stray a little bit too far into that samey territory with things. But I think that all of the moments of nostalgia in this are done for a specific reason. I don't feel like any are artificially thrown in there. I feel like it's all done to serve the character, the writing, and just the overall feel of it. I have seen a comment, by the way, from Anais asking predictions and stuff for season 3. We're not going to go into that in this video at all. We don't want to give anything away for season 3 or anything remotely to do with that. So we are keeping this just focused on season 1 and 2. But yeah, no, so I love her character, and it's, she's perfectly serviceable for the plot, and she's there when she needs to be, and she's a really good addition to the cast. We do have some other characters that we can talk about as well. And we have the character of Robbie. Now, it almost feels like sometimes the season forgets about the character, because you will go through a string of episodes where, he'll be mentioned, he'll be in a couple of episodes, and you'll go like 4 episodes where you won't see him. And you'll forget about him. You're focusing on other things. You're focusing on other drama that's going on at the moment. And then he'll come back and you're like, oh, yeah, that's right. Johnny does have a son. He kind of feels a bit of an afterthought in some ways. But I think that certainly for season 1, to a lesser extent season 2, and it goes into that kind of teen melodrama thing where it almost felt like they didn't know what to do with his character in season 2. With a lot of the kids actually in series 2. But season 1, as much as they do kind of neglect him a little bit, it works when you get to that finale, when you get to that tournament, and we'll talk about the tournament in just a second. But it's that I mentioned that line, that divide between the two sides, and Robbie is that one that adds that confusion to Johnny, because he has kind of been a deadbeat dad. He hasn't been there in Robbie's life for 16 years. Robbie doesn't want anything to do with him. He's kind of a tearaway. He's a bit of a criminal. He comes from a really broken home. Even the scenes with his mom, I thought, were very hard hitting as well. And you do feel a lot of sympathy for Robbie in those moments where the mom's just sort of like, someone's in and out of the bed every single night, different guy every night, and he's just an afterthought, and he's just sat there on his own listening to his headphones, living his life as best as he can by himself. He is quite a tragic character in that way, and you do want to see him reconcile with his dad, but there's a lot of baggage there. There's a lot of bad blood between the two. And when Johnny is devoting all of this time to Miguel, who, again, you want to see Johnny devote that time to Miguel. Miguel doesn't have a father figure, but Miguel's getting all this attention from his dad. It immediately sets up that wedge between Robbie and Miguel, which leads to a very, very satisfying conclusion when we get to the tournament. You can understand both of them. And right in the middle of the two, you've got Johnny. So inherently it's all about Johnny, but it is also about these two separate father-son figures as well.
Yeah, and that's what I like with Robbie. He has these moments that, it's what he said, sometimes he'll be on and you enjoy the story, but then he can also dip off, and it's like, I don't really miss the fact he's not here. I think you got the big moment, which I guess sets the season in stone, when he does go to his dad's dojo. He is going to ask to be trained. He realizes that his dad is doing something nice, and he sees his dad hand over the karate uniform to Miguel. And that's the moment in season 1 was like, okay, this is going to turn into something bigger. And of course, who does he then get trained with? What's his game plan? to go to Daniel LaRusso and take the training from him. And this is when I thought, okay, this is going to be a really nice way to bring in the rivalry from the 80s, because it's so easy to have them as adults and be like, we fought once with this and that. But this is when it's, okay, now they're both going to directly be involved. They're both going to be sort of father figure protagonist, father figure antagonist, and we're going to get that for this series. And obviously, that stems into season 2 very, very well. And Robbie's the key to all of it, which amazes me, because he's not Miguel, he's not the main character, he's not Sam, the daughter of the lead, and he's this kind of third sort of lead actor of the kids, is a nice way of saying. And when you mention the sort of drama things, the season 2, the very much higher school stuff, we do get those bits, and it all leads up to obviously the season 2 ending. But I think season 1, he's like an enigma. You want to see more of him, want to get to learn more about him, and I love the relationship with him and Dan. I think it's a really smart way for him to be trained. It's the whole Cobra Kai's attack, Miyagi-Do's defense, and I like the fact that the son of Cobra Kai has been trained by Daniel LaRusso. It's like the greatest weapon used against him, and you get that great moment. I can't remember what episode, when Johnny discovers that it is him, and Daniel doesn't know either, and it's this big betrayal moment. Obviously, that leads to the Karate Kid tournament at the All Valley, when you get this incredible story. I mean, it's one episode, but we get to see a proper tournament built from all the angles. But I think Robbie's got his place, and it really comes into it at the end of season 1. Not so much season 2. So I'm hoping, obviously, for more in season 3.
Yeah, and the tournament itself as well. I think when we were watching it, I compared it to Warrior, the Tom Hardy film.
Yeah.
Oh God, what's the name of the other guy? Taron Egerton.
Joel Edgerton.
Joel Edgerton. Sorry, where you have these two. Well, that's two brothers in that film, and the father is in the middle. So very similar themes, the father and son themes, which I always think work very effectively in a film if written well and done well. Where you have both of these people, one's more wealthier, well-to-do, has got his life in order. The other one's less well-to-do. And you kind of want both of them to win. You want to see them both reconcile. And that's kind of what I get with the end as well, with Miguel, Robbie, and then Johnny in the middle, and then Daniel's there as well, because you do have that innate rivalry between Robbie, who wants to get back at Miguel for his father stealing all the attention from him. But then you also, as the figureheads of that, you still have Johnny and Daniel. And although they might not necessarily be fighting in that tournament X amount of years later, there is still a natural rivalry there between the two. I think it's fantastically written, and it all comes together in season 1. We probably are going to lead into season 2 now, but one thing I just want to talk about the general feel of season 1 is that it is clearly like a love letter to like 80s and stuff like that. Even in episode 1, there is a driving montage which is so akin to Rocky IV, the No Easy Way Out driving montage from that film. It's shot in the same way, it's edited in a similar way. The music as well, you mentioned it, I think, I don't know if you mentioned it when we were on the review before. It feels like there's a new 80s song per episode. It definitely feels that way. And as we were watching through the series, I kept saying it feels like it's a soundtrack that's been crafted, molded, and perfected in a lab. And there you go, Chris, here's your perfect soundtrack to a TV series. It's everything I want, and that gets a rise out of me too. And it's naturally going back to that 80s nostalgia I keep talking about. And I do think that we have seen a resurgence of that. I think Stranger Things definitely helped to cement that, and then since then we have had a bunch of franchises coming back, and franchises we continue to see come back. I mean, we've got the new Top Gun film coming out next year, a new Ghostbusters film, and I think that's just going to keep going. It seems to be making bank at the moment. Recently, Wonder Woman 1984. I don't want to go too much into that, but it's got 1984 in the title at least. So I do love the feel of it as well, and I think that it is striking that perfect balance. I think it's a very difficult balance to get down. Almost feels like Miyagi, doesn't it? Balance. It's all about balance. But to cater to the original fans and have enough in there and enough content for the original fans to still gravitate towards that and appreciate it, but offering new stuff, new characters, new drama, new dilemmas, new storylines that is going to grab the attention of newer fans and maybe even introduce them to the Karate Kid franchise if they haven't watched it before. And if it can do that, then fair play. And we have one more character that we haven't talked about that returns in this as well, which takes us to the end of series 2, sets us up very nicely. The end of season 1 sets us up very nicely for season 2. And that is Martin Cove's return as the character of John Kreese. I kind of guessed it was going to head in that direction. Like, you bring back Johnny, you bring back Daniel, but it's just when you see that silhouette in the doorway and that gravelly, gruff voice, that familiar voice, and then he emerges out of the shadows. It's the perfect ending to series 1, I think, and it's that cliffhanger, isn't it? It's that bringing that character back. And I remember seeing that for the first time. I was like, oh my God, we're doing this. But thankfully, I didn't have a year wait at that point because I had 2 seasons out already that I could just go back through. So it was straight onto season 2 for me in no time at all. But again, like, I guess we can move on to series 2 if we finished everything that we want to talk about on series 1 and Crease, or unless you...
I will say, if you have a favorite moment from season 1, we haven't really delved into the tournament.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that. Yeah.
Without a doubt, favorite moment is the first fight. It's the headshot kick knockout. It's the ultimate middle finger to Daniel LaRusso, just obliterates him. And as a side point off the back of that, I loved the tournament in Karate Kid 1. I mean, obviously, the bits we've got in the third one. But I'm not saying it feels more real, because it doesn't. I think with that sort of modern equipment, modern technology, camera equipment, the fights feel a lot more intense.
The choreography is great in it.
Yeah,
like,
the choreography is great.
The fights, yeah.
And I think the difference when you've got TV versus film is we've had all these characters along the season we've followed. So suddenly, when they're in the quarterfinals, and there's 8 of them, we know probably 5 of the 8 that are in these quarterfinals. And, you know, when it is a film, because you've got hero villain, it's like, okay, Daniel LaRusso is obviously going to fight Johnny in the final, and he's going to take out the Cobra Kai henchman throughout. And we do get those little bits, but the fact it's TV enables you to do something else. It's like, okay, could we have a shock on the cards? Could we have a character make a decision that's going to impact them in season 2 onwards? Are they going to turn? Obviously, we got the I keep saying Hawkeye. No, it's not goal line technology. Obviously, with Hawk, you know, you've got him going for the shoulder, going for the injuries, old school Cobra Kai. Then you've got Miguel doing the same thing. It's the whole no mercy. And it's really fascinating place to leave those in, because at the end of season 1, obviously it's great that I could go forward 6 hours and start watching season 2, which I did. But obviously in that year gap, it's like, oh, like, are those two gonna turn on Johnny because he's now feeling guilt that he wanted them to show mercy? Is that going to be something that comes back to haunt them? Obviously, it does for season 2. But I thought that entire karate tournament was just amazing TV. And it was so great in the final as well. Even you kind of summed up the Ryan Johnson meme when you're in that dressing room. And the hands, I think I was messaging, I was like, oh my God, is he going to do the magic hand trick? And then he claps them, rubs them, and calls the nurse. It is the lightsaber over the shoulder thing.
That might be the one moment that doesn't really land for me. That bit felt
it's
a bit artificial.
I think because he's sort of done all the other Miyagi stuff throughout the year, it's like, oh, is he saving that till last? But no, he don't think he even does it in season 2, does he? Maybe he never got trained it. Who knows? Maybe, yeah. I'm just trying to think some other great season 1. I mean, there's so much of it that's great. It's like a blur.
Yeah, and that's the problem with binging everything, isn't it? It all kind of merges into one. Anais has a favorite moment. She says her favorite moments is the beginning of Miguel's training in season 1. Yeah, all the training's great in it. I do have a favorite episode of series 1 though, and I think a lot of my favorite moments are those more nostalgic, emotional moments where you have the original cast reflecting on times gone by, what could have happened, what did happen. And I think it's episode 5, Counterbalance, of season 1, where it's all about Mr. Miyagi. And it's a beautiful tribute to Pat Morita. I think he even gets sort of a little card at the end, which says like in memoriam kind of thing to him. But it's the moment where it's like the Rocky films, it's the Creed films. Whenever there's a graveyard scene in one of these sporting films, it just absolutely kills me. It's where Daniel goes to the grave of Mr. Miyagi, and you know he's got the bonsai tree there. He's pruning the tree, pruning the tree. Whatever, I probably said a wrong word there. And he's saying that he feels lost. He doesn't know what to do. He felt like Mr. Miyagi had all the answers, and now he's in that sort of mentor chair almost. He is a sensei now, and he's struggling. He needs a teacher as well. Everyone needs a teacher. Everyone needs someone to look up to. And he's completely lost with Miyagi. And even in death, even though Miyagi isn't there, he can still find clarity and he can still find the way in his path. And it's that moment where he gets back to the car, looks out, and we get that flashback and that teaching, that mentoring from the first film where he says, you remember the lesson about balance. Balance is for whole life. And he gets the clarity he needs. Beautiful moment, that one. And then the end of that episode, oh my God, I lost my mind when I first watched that. We have the original Bill Conti music kicking in at the end. He has the headband, he puts it on. It's the ultimate hero moment. It is I don't know. Can we talk about Mando now? Can we talk about the last episode of Mando? Yeah. It's the Luke Skywalker moment at the end of that. It's that hero moment that you really want to see and you finally get. So that definitely cemented it for me as this is a special show. I was enjoying the show up until that point, but it was that episode that cemented it for me, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's what nice is that it's still paying respect. It's not doing anything stupid. It's not trying to let's have a new Mr. Miyagi, i.e. not recasting, but let's have someone else enter his life as a guide who's older. And it's like, no, we're gonna pay respect for him. We're gonna do it in the right way. And that episode was the best way they did it in season 1. And obviously, we get a little bits of it again in season 2, especially with the setting and the dojo as well. But I like the fact that they do pay that respect, because it would be easy for them to go and do something else, whether it be what's the word? I'm struggling to think of the word. I mean, it's doing it in like good taste. That's probably the nicest way of saying it. It's we're not hounding a message or using him to say X, Y, and Z or just show old clips. If we're gonna bring him in via a flashback, it's gonna be for a specific moment that equates to what we're seeing on screen. And it's not been done for the sake of it. It's because there's something in the story that needs this to be said to him. I think that's why it works and it's more powerful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Janaya says that I like Johnny giving Miguel dating advice and just helping him be more confident. I just really like the relationship between those two in the series. I think inherently, certainly with series 1, that is the crux of it. That is the biggest takeaway. It is that it's the father figure he never had. It's exactly the same beats almost as the first Karate Kid movie, but it does feel like it's done in a fresh way. And I think that's to do with Johnny being the protagonist and that shift in us and what we know from those older characters. I think it's perfectly handled, perfectly balanced, as all things should be. And then we get on to, are we ready to talk about season 2? Should we get into season 2 now?
Yeah.
Kreese, discuss. It's incredible. When he comes out chomping that cigar, I think you mentioned it, he's like Schwarzenegger strolling out in that dojo. And it's just like, this is right. This feels right. I'm glad that he's here.
Yeah, and I think the big thing watching season 2 for the first time was that he's not a guest appearance. He's not coming in for 10 minutes like, thanks for bringing Cobra Kai back. This means a lot to me. Here's my character ending. I've grown old. I'm past this. Thank you. It means a lot to me. No. Here is I am the same as I was then. I will always be the same. It's like I am Cobra Kai. That's basically the character of Kreese, and he is pure evil. It's encouraging evil. It's you kind of like him. You're scared. You'd be if we do conventions, right? And we've obviously spoken sort of that's this, but if he was at one, I'd feel scared to be in his presence. He's probably like the nicest dude in the entire world. Could be, maybe he's not, but that guy is just I don't know if it's the arms, it's the Bane thing, and
yeah, it's that, isn't it? Constant in this pose all the way through. Yeah,
and I think he knows what what's the word? They know what they're doing with him, because season 2, the core of it is Daniel versus Johnny, but Kreese is in the background plotting. He is there, and so we get the final shot of season 2, or the final scene where he has not just took the dojo. He's also took his students, everyone in it. But I'm so happy that he's a recurring character. That's the TV term, and I think it adds a new dynamic, because if it was just Johnny versus Daniel, it's like, oh, okay. Whereas you bring Kreese in, and obviously we'll talk about that. But when we get the Cobras reunion in that great episode, and they're like, hold on, you're back with him. Why? Daniel, hold on, you're back with him. Why? Everyone knows this guy's bad for him, and Johnny's just giving him a chance, and Kreese is going to take that chance and do something with it. He's playing a game from the start, and I think he is superb. He's exactly what this show needs, and my God, it's what we said. I think the final comparison was he's like Harrison Ford crossed over with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's that like it's the soft voice, but it's also the walking, the rip. I said to you, like, was this guy in it much else? Like, he should have been in the Expendables. It looks perfect as the era, but what a way to bring it back. And this is the thing, it's all this new to it. I loved it, but could you imagine, especially for you as well, being someone that grew up with that, haven't seen anything for years, and then it's like, oh my God, he's back. What a moment. So especially to anyone that was obviously waiting, I thought easily one of the best things in it.
So I was just going to say that, like I haven't seen Martin Coven all that much. And granted, I think that, again, similar to most of the casts in this, the Karate Kid franchise is what I know them for the most. I have just checked his credits to see if I've seen him in anything recently, remotely recent. Apparently, he played a sheriff on Bounty Law in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'm going to have to rewatch that film now, like pause that whole Bounty Law section to see if I can find it. That's probably just like a few second shot, but the fact that he was in that's kind of cool. And Martin Cove himself, like, my God, the dude is like 74, 75 years old. Incredible shape. Like, comparative to like a Stallone or a Schwarzenegger. This guy's ripped. This guy means business. And like most of the cast, really, they haven't aged a day, really. They've aged miraculously. I'll have what they're having. Jesus Christ, I hope I look as good as he does at the age of 75. Christ. But going back to the writing as well, and I think this is, again, a testament to the writing behind this whole show. Certainly that first part of Series 2, you really don't know where your loyalties lie with Kreese. I think Anais puts it brilliantly. Let me just find out where she says it here. He's the favorite villain you love to hate. That's what he was in that original trilogy, but he shows up like almost like a humbled man in this. And you know that he's probably going to go the way of the villain, like he has to. That is his role, and he does it well. But they give him a lot more to do in Series 2, and we get like a lot of different sides to him and stories to him that we haven't seen before, and a bit more insight into his personality and really what he's been doing all of these years, or really what he hasn't been doing. Because when he first phrases there, he says that he talks himself up. He went back and did some like special forces missions, I think he said, or something. He did some like military gigs, I think, and everything, with training people up. And he talks the talk, and he's gone on all these wonderful adventures. And then Johnny sees that he's just, I don't say, is he in like a homeless shelter or something? Is he in some kind of
looks like, not like a retirement home, but it looks like one of those places where you can like rent rooms out and stuff. Exactly, and you sympathize because, this sweet old man just wants to go back to the past because he's obviously had this crap life since Karate Kid 3, obviously. The Knuckles, one of the best on season 2. How's the Knuckles? That makes things like, okay, maybe there's still some good in him. Absolutely not. He knew what this is. The man that was jumping to the end was changing the statements and everything. Like he played it straight to Johnny that this is my dojo now, and he's played that waiting game. And he is as a pathetic, cheesy comment as a Cobra. He striked first. Strike hard. He showed no mercy. The perfect. Well, he's not even a student because it's his. It's what a saying, though. It's something we didn't really discuss in the Karate films. Without a doubt, I saw it one of the most intense sayings I'm probably going to overuse for the next few months. Whether it's playing Football Manager with my friends, strike first, strike hard, no mercy. It's a way to go about it. Different things, obviously, not for fighting necessarily, but great quotes.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's that, he'll sucker you in, the audience, with like a 2 or 3 minute dialogue scene. And you mentioned like the sympathy there. And then he'll turn away and say, right, well, I guess I should be heading off. And he'll walk off. And it'll be that smirk to camera. And you're like, oh, you son of a bitch. Like, you had me going as well. And that it's down to the performance. It's down to the writing. He's brilliant. And he is absolutely playing the long game. But what I think, so the theme of Series 1, I think, was the theme of sort of like father and sons. And there's a lot of those sort of either like deadbeat dad dynamics or looking for father figures. You have, like Sam with her father, Miguel with Johnny with his dad, who was a deadbeat dad, and then he had the upbringing. And again, going back to Johnny, the whole stepdad, like we thought he was this rich kid, this posh kid in the first film. We get recontextualized that it was his stepdad who was just funding all the money. There's that dynamic going on there. There's Robbie and his dad. So there's a lot going on with that. But I think the theme for season 2 is it's just straight up this rivalry now. It's this split down the middle between the two dojos, which was perfectly set up at the end of season 1. You have Daniel LaRusso with Miyagi-Do Karate, and then you have John Kreese now and Johnny Lawrence with Cobra Kai. And I mean, if I was going to join one of these, of course I'd join Cobra Kai. Like, who wouldn't? Right? That's the dojo that's getting stuff done. None of this Jedi mindful yoga bullshit with Miyagi-Do. Like, I want to kick some ass. I'm going to Cobra Kai. So I know where my loyalties lie with that. But it's a good. Yeah, go on. Sorry. Yeah,
I was going to say, and I love that's the whole point of their rivalry for the series is even when you got the parade when they bring out the ice boxes to remember this, they even show the flashback, and it's this big moment for Cobra Kai to come in, and you get these great scenes throughout the series. Like, well, my kid gets bullied. Why wouldn't I want to take him to the place that's going to train him to rise up to it? And it is that Jedi Sith dynamic, and Cobra, and it is also in this series where the Cobra Kai is starting to re-emerge as the villains, not necessarily the sort of bullies that are being bullied. It's now they've become the bullies, and you get this great dynamic. It's like, oh, have they done a heel turn like halfway through season 2? Have they gone extreme, and are you now putting your allegiance back to Daniel, even though the whole point of season 1 was to not necessarily like him, but to be aware of that he wasn't all that. And it goes down to the credit of the writing that they're just slowly switching things on their head to get this big payoff, to get this final moment. And I just put it in the perfect comment. Cree Smith played Johnny, so he'd take over the dojo when Johnny's at his weakest. And that was essentially his game plan, and he knew he'd get it in them. Obviously, you get the school fight, one of the most insane school fights I've ever seen, which we'll obviously get to in a bit. But as a season 2 concept, season 1 set up everyone's character arcs perfectly, so season 2 could be the rivalry re-entertains.
Yeah, and we've kind of discussed it already, but we feel that overall season 2 is a little bit weaker. I think, we're reintroduced to a new, well, not reintroduced, sorry, that's the wrong word. Introduced to a new character with Tori, who seemingly shows up out of nowhere. You've watched it recently, as I mentioned. Like, I didn't get to, unfortunately, rewatch all of series 2 before this review, but I just remember her showing up in an episode and just like, hi, I'm Tori. I'm going to be like one of the main supporting cast now. I don't feel like we got much of an introduction to her. I really like her character. I like her attitude. I think she's played well. And obviously she has her own rivalries of her own, specifically with Samantha towards the end of the series. But it is all knit into this teen melodrama. And that stuff worked for series 1. But I think it went down, I don't want to say stereotypical route, but it just wasn't as interesting as all the other stuff that was going on really around the series. So that is probably why I dock it points, really, if I am going to give like a score to both the series, really.
Yeah, it's my kind of slight criticism that it became very much, I've seen this before a lot of times on other TV shows. It's they didn't get together in season 1. They're going to split up and she's going to get with the other guy, but oh no, she's still in love and he's still in love. But look, the new guy won't give him the medal to show it was nice all along. And don't get me wrong, I still enjoyed the show for that kind of thing, but it kind of took the ball off. Okay, that's not what I thought was going to happen. However, you get to that finale, goes, okay, I understand the point of this finale because it's set up a situation with the cliffhanger now. But it is certainly focusing so much completely on the individual Johnny versus Daniel rivalry and then the students below them. I feel as if we're missing out on some personal stuff with Johnny that maybe we could have had, because in the first half of season 1, certainly Johnny becoming this independent man, he's going to build up a dojo, he's going to sort his life out, and we get all this personal stuff because he is the protagonist of the show. And in season 2, he kind of drops off ever so slightly. Even Miguel drops off, and he's one of my favorite characters season 1. He doesn't get an awful lot to do in season 2. We have the great setup of he won that tournament, but he attacked someone that was injured, and you get these interesting things. And then when Tori comes in, I don't mind her as a character, but it's like, okay, she's going to get with him, and it's going to be a jealousy thing now because she's the evil Sam. She's got like dark makeup. She's not a rich girl. She's a poor girl, and she had all this. And the whole purpose of it is to be the rivalry. And obviously that gets a fantastic payoff. But Miguel feels like he takes a back seat, and so does Johnny. And that's why it's harder for me to look at season 2 with as much fun as season 1, because the Johnny and Miguel stuff was phenomenal in season 1, and you still get moments of it in season 2. Certainly the final episode, all the hospital scenes we get as well there. With him going on dates with Carmen. Obviously, at the end of it, it's like, I never want to see you again. And we've just had this amazing them at the bar with the Russos, and it's so strange because I've really enjoyed season 2. It's just there's just something missing, and I think it's that character arc for Johnny and Miguel, which I'm hoping season 3 delves into more.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. they do. He is overshadowed in series 2, and that's a shame because that was the foundation. That was such a big cornerstone of that first series, and they nailed it. They did it brilliantly in series 1, and it's just you wanted more of that. You wanted to see that develop, and yeah, you do get some scenes with them, but it doesn't feel as strong as that first one, or like a good solid continuation of that. And it's right, like all that melodrama stuff. You've seen it in every other teenage TV show that comes out, whether it's a CW show, whether it's whatever it happens to be. It's a tried and tested formula, and some people love that stuff. I'm sure there's some audiences out there that love that kind of relationship drama and will they, won't they, and she saw him kissing him behind his back kind of thing. It's all a part of it, but what I love is just seeing Johnny's character and Daniel's character. And you mentioned there about the whole dating thing as well. I know this might be jumping ahead to favorite moments of series 2, but I love the fact that we are seeing Johnny slowly and surely as series 2 continues trying to become a better man for himself. He's cleaning up his apartment. He's going on dates. I love that. I guess I'm kind of getting swept in the melodrama, but of him and Carmen, like I love seeing him go on dates, and that whole dating montage is brilliant. The bit where he accidentally matches and goes on a date with that woman who gave him a hard time in series 1 when he was putting the TV up on a wall, and they match again. I thought that was a really funny moment there. The dream sequence, which I don't know if it's at the beginning of that episode, where he's having this really like racy, raunchy vision of him and Carmen together to Here I Go Again by Whitesnake. That when I first saw that, I just lost it at that part. I thought that was hilarious. But my favorite moment is that double date that they go on eventually, where you've got Daniel and his wife and then him and Carmen. And it starts off with that really awkward tension where it's just like, should we put the tables together? It's like, no, like, why is he here? But it's like one of those moments. It's similar to the moment in series 1 for me, where you have Daniel and Johnny and they bomb off and they go to Daniel's old apartment from the first Karate Kid film. There's a lot of cool flashbacks and reminiscing about how they grow up and their upbringing, and they're learning new things about each other. That's there where Daniel realizes that, oh, he wasn't this posh kid, it was just the stepdad of the relationship between Johnny's mum and this stepdad. And then they go to the bar and they're bonding over Ali, and when they were both seeing her in the first film. And I think that this double date moment in series 2 is a similar moment to that, and those are the moments that I kind of live for with this series, where they're this close to being friends, and they're this close, and then something will happen straight afterwards and just completely ignite the fire again. But I know jumping ahead, that's probably one of my favorite moments in series 2.
Yeah, and it sets up perfectly, knowing that there's going to be this big finale coming up shortly involving all their students, which is going to tarnish the whole night they had together. And it's a great scene between the pair of them. And deep down they do like each other. Deep down they've got that respect for one another, but they're both too arrogant to admit it. And I like the fact that they are very similar people, and they're aware of that. I think that's where the schools come into it. It's attack versus defense, and it's that reignited theme over and over and over again. And I think ultimately it leads up to the school fight, because even before that, the double date's happening at the same time as the party at Moon's house, which I guess is important for some character development moments. You've got essentially Hawk's humiliation, which is one of the funniest scenes in all of them, because we actually haven't really spoke about Hawk. I guess he's worth a couple of
Hawk for a second, yeah.
Yeah, because in season 1 it's like, okay, he's going to be the bully that turns cool, and in season 1 is that really far-fetched, like, like he's really funny now because he's like 12 and he got a tattoo because he's now hard. And in season 1 it feels like a parody of that, like the bully that turns cool. In season 2, he is no parody. He has turned into like Tom Hardy's Bane. And we'll get to the school fight shortly, because that's the first thing I messaged you.
Mm-hmm.
He is pure evil in this, and there doesn't look like there's any shout of anything changing. And I love the fact that I apologize, I forgot the name of his best friend, the other nerd, when they're at the comic book shop. Dimitri, when they're at the comic book shop, and there's these scenes where they're trying to befriend each other, and it just can't be done. That they want to be friends. They're talking about Doctor Who, and it's the really nerdy stuff, and he's kind of like he's seeing the light, and then he's like, no, I need to be a bad man. And he is. I'm not going to say he's Crease's perfect student, but he's exactly what Crease wants, and Crease knows what he can get out of people like him. And I think leading up to that, let's bring him back down to reality. Let's have him humiliated in front of everyone else. I think that's a really cool scene. But the guy is an absolute savage, and he doesn't look shredded. It's that so far fetched. I don't know if Cobra Kai is classified as a drama or a comedy or a bit of both, but he is that he's that caricature. But he suits being in a show like this. He suits if it was an outright drama and he was the bully student, now the cool guy. That's basically Miguel. So you need his other guy to be the one that's so over the top he's past then. Even the tattoo he gets of Moon is one of the funniest things I've seen in this. In season 2 when he gets that tattoo for, and obviously the dorks are now obviously getting the cool girls as well, and it's like completely 180. And I think Hawk was worthy. And like I said, he's got, you called it the text tone. Every time like he makes an appearance, obviously we get the Coyote Cliff where we do get the training montage with him too, where we get those moments of this is a guy just killing everyone mercilessly. Now he doesn't win though. So that's a good segue. Or
well, I was going to say Hawk for me. He's out of probably like the main Cobras. He's the one that gets the most development or like character growth from how he originally started out. He started out as a Eugene. Oh God, I forgot his surname, but this very long-winded name. And he was a nerdy kid. He barely talked. A very shy kid, picked on at school. He had like the surgery scar, whatever. So he was picked on quite a lot. I think it happens very quickly though. And then he just strolls in. He's like rocking a mohawk. He's getting the tattoos and everything. Complete personality change, like just complete 180. But in that change, I think it makes him one of the most interesting members of the Cobras. I think once he hits that point though, he does kind of stay at that badass Hawk state. He doesn't sort of like go past that all that much. Yeah. He sort of like hit that point very quickly and then stay at that. But it's development. He's changed from how he was, and you do get those moments, although very brief, those moments of vulnerability where someone will mention something from his past or his old name, or what he used to do and everything like that, the clubs that he used to be involved with, and you can see there that flicker of the Eugene behind the eye is still there, and he's just trying to shut it out. So I think he's definitely one of the best. And you're right, like at the end, that whole corridor thing where he's stalking Dimitri, that was terrifying when I watched that. I was like, oh my God. Let's talk about the school fight then. Let's talk about it. So we've got a lot of love in the comments for the school fight. Anais says, my favorite moment in series 2 is the school fight. Janaya says the school fight was great. I had to watch it twice. Oh, we might disagree on this one. So I don't actually know your full stance on the school fight. Now, what I will say about it for me, it's brilliantly choreographed. I think a lot of it is done in one shot. Where it's, the corridor. Fair play to them. Like that, to synchronize all that, to get it done, brilliant. It does go on for way too long, I think. It goes on for it feels like it's over 10 minutes. It's just non-stop, and I know that it's a ridiculous concept. Karate Kid overall is a ridiculous concept, even from that original film. I get it. And there's been a fair share of ridiculous stuff, especially in Karate Kid 3. But this is just like over the line for me. It's like a fight like this would not exist in a school. This fight would not make it past 20 seconds tops. The fact that it goes on for 10 minutes and it moves, it's like geographically distributed. It starts in the corridors, in the lockers, it transitions to the main lobby, it works its way up the staircase and then onto the balcony. You've got teachers saying, oh, I'm not getting involved, like this is too much for me, this karate is crazy, like I value my job, and it's like, this is so over the top. This feels like it jumped the shark to me at the end of series 2. Now ultimately what it leads to is brilliant. A very hard-hitting moment, sets us up perfectly for season 3 with the accident that happens with Miguel, the divide between Miyagi-Do and ultimately what the karate has led to. But it's just that initial fight itself. I feel like you could have trimmed about 5 to 6 minutes off that thing and you would have still got the same result.
Maybe I'm going to bring personal stuff into this. So we've actually got a comment. I don't like the reasoning behind the fight. I get that. So they build up this first day of school. It's like, oh, I forgot this was set over summer because I've watched it in 2 sittings on the same day I watched season 1, and I guess 3. And the moment she's not here, is like she's going to jump her. There's going to be a fight, and it's obviously we're both in England. We've never been to American schools, so we don't know how realistic it is. We obviously just see what we see in films and TV or what's on the news with certain shootings and whatnot. And in this one, it's really principal's office stealing the megaphone. I was like, oh, okay. And I'm coming for you, bitch. That is terrifying words to hear, because it's like, oh, it's going down. And I was ready for it because I loved the whole fight. It was building up to the parents aren't going to fight. It needs to be the students. I didn't expect it to be at a school in front of everyone. And it did make me think of going back to secondary school. So, like, I don't know if it's the same if you, like, you'd be playing on the field or whatever with your mates, and suddenly there'd be like 300, 400 people just running to this one spot, and there's always a fight happening. And
so, any karate fights happen at your school, George, while you're at school?
not karate, more fists from the ones that wanted to do it, or more sort of two-footed tackles in football that's then had punches after. But we used to play bulldog. If anyone knows what that is, that was a fun one. Anyway, I love that cheesy stuff, the snidey stuff. The let's just have everyone beat the shit into one another, because that's exactly what's going to happen. And I like the fact
the top is 80s, so maybe I'm way off base on this one. Maybe you're right.
I think it works, but because it was being over the top throughout this series, especially Coyote Cliff, and for all these crazy things happen, like, okay, we've had this house party last week as well. What more can be added into the mix? And the fight at school did that, and we have. I mentioned the Bane comparison from Dark Knight Rises. We have Hawk. We're forgetting we haven't yet spoke about one of the greatest characters in the Cobra Kai series, Stingray. Played by Paul Walter Hauser. If you've not seen him in anything else other than Cobra Kai, he is in Black Klansman. He's in I, Tonya. He's also in Five Bloods, and he was in Richard Jewell, where he was almost up for Oscars, and he's going to be in Cruella. He's a very strange. He's kind of like the version of Alan from The Hangover that can act in real life, but he is incredible in this show. From the Coyote Cliff, hiding in the leaves the entire time to win the fight. He is dedicated, and
that's one of my favorite series too.
When it reached into it, like, wait, he's getting a job interview at the school. I was like, this is going pretty far over the moment. And then the fight breaks out, and he just has this, like, he has his own like 10, 15 seconds of like, he like sort of like shimmies with his ass like a kid's head into a locker. It's every single character that you spent time with in this series has a moment in that fight. And his was perfect. We had the alcohol bottles the episode before where he taped his hand to the wall and he couldn't get out. In fact, he brought like an adult to the party and it's all 15-year-olds there. I think the fight worked. I get exactly what you mean, the criticism that it does go over the top. Running around the computer room, then running again and running some more. You could have took a couple of minutes off, but I liked where it wanted to set up season 3. The fact that Hawk gets battered by Dimitri, he gets kicked into the door, and you kind of... I didn't actually expect it. I know on paper it's really obvious, but because Dimitri's been terrible all season long, and he is the running joke of Miyagi-Do, and obviously he does have that one moment where he defects 2 shots, but so to get the victory over him, that sets up their own story arc for what we might get in season 3. And obviously you've got Sam and Tori, and she's seen her kissing her boyfriend, and it's like, okay, puts the metal things on her hand as well.
How hardcore it gets when she gets that knuckle duster of just pure spikes. I'm like, oh, this is cool now. This is just taking it to a whole other level. This is like death now.
It goes back to Karate Kid 2. I can't say it's so over the top. It went from like fighting at the tournament to live or die man in Okinawa, and obviously Chosen didn't get the fate he wanted. But I just love the fight, and obviously we know it's building to something, because you're not just going to keep climbing up flights of stairs if someone's not going to drop down them, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that Robbie gets involved and the whole fight starts is that Miguel does start this. Robbie's trying to stop the fight, and it's Miguel that then attacks Robbie, and you've got all the sort of the dojos at one another, but leading up to the final moment of he shows mercy, he apologizes, you think it's over, and then you get, the kick over the barrier, as you said, Dumbledore slow motion. And then I guess it's the Kenneth Branagh tenet, let's now speed it back up, which is like hitting the back off the side of the railing and head on the ground. And that is a cliffhanger and a half.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's why I can't... So the fight, as I said, for me, it goes on too long. But where it ends up, and I think that moment there, that character moment between Miguel and showing mercy to Robbie, that is the strength of this ending for me. And this is why I can't come down on it like thunder, because the themes are not only just there from season 2, but it also harkens back to that final moment from season 1 as well, at that tournament where Miguel didn't play by the rules. He did play unfair, and he did go for the weak spots and utilize that because that was the training. And that's history repeating itself. Johnny learns the error of his ways and says that, we should show mercy. We've got to be better than this. And it's kind of not just for Miguel's sake, but for his own sake, because he doesn't want to see Miguel, the same things that, to happen to Miguel, which happened to himself. So that's all coming into the fold as well for that final scene. And ultimately we see where mercy leads you. It leads you into getting thrown over the edge of a stairway and, destroying your back and putting you in a coma. And that sets us up beautifully for season 3, because not only is it like a devastating loss because we love the character of Miguel, it's that complete divide, this huge moment where the violence has peaked between the two rivalries between the dojos. Daniel, everything he's trained, he put all his time and effort into Robbie. He was one of his favorite students, and he's kind of betrayed him and gone overboard and done this act of violence. And then you've also got Johnny, who instructed Miguel to do this and to show mercy, so he feels personally responsible. So from that one moment there, that one inciting incident, you've got all of these rivalries being built up, and just factions being torn apart, and new rivalries being started. So it's a perfect place to end it. And then obviously the ending stinger of that episode, the final season finale of series 2, is the mobile phone, the friend request from Ali being returned to Johnny, who he throws his phone away, so he's not aware at this point that he's got the friend request through. But that final stinger, and not to mention the soundtrack as well. Like at the beginning of the episode, we get the return of the Bananarama song Cruel Summer, which was in the first Karate Kid film, but by the end of it you get an amazing cover of that song, and it's a completely different mood, different tone. It's much more emotional and kind of haunting, which will then take us into series 3. So I don't know, there's a lot I like about series 2 still. There's a lot of great moments. To me as a whole, it doesn't hit the heights of season 1, which is to be expected, but it still builds on those themes that were brought up in season 1, and it introduces new ones. The setups to all of these series are great so far. And Stingray, just going really, really quickly back to Stingray. This is such a weird tangent for me to end my overall thoughts on for series 2, but before going into it, I said to you, there is a character in series 2 that you're either going to love or you're going to hate. Now, I've known you for many years now. I've known the kind of comedy that you're into and certain characters that you're into. I had a feeling that you might like him, because I think I mentioned to you, it is almost like in that very... I compared it to Michael Bay, like a character in a Michael Bay film, where it is so ridiculous and you almost can't comprehend the ridiculousness of the character that's happening in the world that he's in. But he kind of works for me. And I'll be lying if I said that I didn't like his character. I did get a good laugh every single time. The moment where he breaks out the leaves is one of my, probably like my top 3 favorite moments of the episode. The job interview at the end, where he's using those as like credentials on his resume, when he says like, why you qualified for this, and he says, well, I won this red headband at Coyote Creek, no big deal, and I might be coming up to a yellow belt in a few months' time. It's completely ridiculous, even in the world, but I love his character. Oh my god, is there anything else from season 2? I feel like I've missed like a big part of series 2 out, but I'm not sure. I think I pretty much do it for my overall thoughts on season 2, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of echo that with it. It's not as good as season 1, but it's still damn good TV. It's still incredible. Even if season 2 had been first and 1 was second, I still love both of them as much. I think it sets up perfectly for season 3. I mentioned there's a lack of Miguel, but where they end up leaving Miguel for season 3 is that, okay, we got less of him because the moment's going to have more impact than if you'd have done anything else to him. He was fully fleshed out at this point in time, because now he's in a coma. What's going to happen, we don't know. So it's really interesting, the choices they made. The dojo's going for one of the... I mean, it's a really boring sub-story. Obviously, Daniel's car stuff on a side piece. I'm glad they dropped some of that, because this one is more important about the dojo. Obviously, bring the real life stuff into it, that they are struggling at work, they are losing staff, and that's going to play a big deal maybe in the future. We don't know, but it was just cool to get the dojos going for one of the... It feels like there's a comment from an ace which says, I feel like school popularity is based on what dojo you're training at. Absolutely. You want to be training at Cobra Kai. It's the cool places where the cool kids train. It's where they learn stuff. And Miyagi-Do is the lame, boring one because it's about defense. Perfectly summed up in the early episodes when they're marketing their stuff. I know exactly what one I'll be at, because I've ordered the same t-shirt you're wearing now. That's going to arrive tomorrow.
Nice.
But that being said, I think it's as a sort of overall that is 2 seasons of great TV. And it is one of them shows. I said that, is it going to be one of those Facebook hype things? A lot of the time they can be great, but it's when you see the same person or two, this isn't you, there's always that one person we all know. And it's like Game of Thrones is like, yes, I'm the biggest Game of Thrones fan ever. Star Wars, I'm the biggest Mandalorian fan ever. I'm the biggest, Lord of the Rings fan ever. And it's those kind of people that, oh, okay, Cobra Kai is this month's choice. Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, and they move on. And this is a show I've wanted to watch, and I'm happy I've been able to jump on this before season 3, just about, because I've not seen it all over my Facebook yet recently. I think, was it August time it came on Netflix, I want to say? Like, it came the latter half of the year, and it was everywhere. And I was like, I'm going to hold fire, because we planned this stuff a long time in advance. So I'm glad I've held off, because it was great fun to smash out 2 seasons of TV. At this point, I think I finished this at 7 p.m. So I'd done seasons 1 and 2 inside 20 hours, which is just remarkable. But
you threw yourself into this thing as well.
I know.
Steady process. Now, granted, we did have the time constraints of getting these reviews done in time. As mentioned, I will probably tease this in a minute, but we did get to see season 3 early, and it was, at this rate we're probably going to break even with the actual release date, because they moved it forward by a week. But we managed to get it done, and it didn't even feel like a chore to do either. It didn't even feel like, let's get this over with. We were like in it. We were invested, rewatching it, or watching it for the first time in your case with it.
And that's a big thing as a side piece. We love doing these videos, these reviews, and there will be some films where it's like, oh god, we really have to watch this because we have to watch this. Next Karate Kid being one of them. But I was expecting on Cobra Kai, is it going to be something I put in the background because I've got so much stuff going on? Watched one episode, I was like, stop everything I intend on doing for today. Let's just do this. And to binge something that you had a lot of fun with, that was great on its own terms, and not because we had to watch it, just phenomenal. It's made me excited to come on and talk about it, because we do, as you said, time constraint's been a big thing. This was meant to come out in January the 8th, season 3. We've managed to see season 3, and I guess it's worth dropping as well. Tomorrow, we're going to have our spoiler-free review. That's going to be live. When we say spoiler-free, we mean it. When me and Chris discuss Mando with each other, we are so strict. It's going to be that level. There will be no spoilers for anyone at home. It will only be things discussed that we see in the trailer, and some things we are allowed to talk about. So if you want to check out our thoughts before you get the chance to watch season 3, do check us out at the same time tomorrow. That's going to be good fun. It's going to be pretty hard as well. We're going to make sure nothing gets slipped. There'll be no yeses. There'll be no nos. The way we used to do Game of Thrones, if we just ignore it, or we say we can't say yes or no because either response is a spoiler, that's our game plan for tomorrow. But then you're going to think, oh, no, there's so much fun talking about today. I guess we'll also announce this Friday, we're going to have our spoiler review up, and that is going to be pre-recorded. We're going to get this done. We're going to get this recorded. We'll premiere it. So on the day, if you guys want to comment along with us, if you've been able to binge it by then, we'll probably have one of the two of us on, or both of us on, in the comments. So we'll still be there to chat to people throughout. But we obviously want to make sure you guys get a chance to enjoy it. Obviously, we can get 2 reviews out for you for the release date. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be good fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we do have a very strict list, specifically with a spoiler-free one, of things we are allowed and aren't allowed to talk about. And it's a very strict in-writing document that we've had. So, yeah, we're going to have to plan around that. But that will be good fun to talk about. I think we're going to be recording our spoiler-filled discussion right after this one, actually, to pre-record it. So final thoughts on Cobra Kai for me. This is like, I just love this show, and unfortunately now that I've watched season 3 earlier, it means I need to wait longer for the next series to come out. And that's the problem with these things. I love this show so much, and it's just nice to have a show that's come out that isn't mean-spirited, that is fun to watch, that's nice escapism during these times. And it's an inspiring show. I miss stuff like this, stuff that I can go and like take away from and still reflect on and feel inspired by, whether it's the soundtrack, whether it's a moment. The original Karate Kid films did that for me. The Rocky films did that for me. And I'm so glad that Cobra Kai is doing it as well. I may as well mention it here. I was going to mention it in season 3. There was a second, this has never happened before, where I was watching this, and I don't know if it was after I finished season 1 or I don't know if it was after I finished season 2, where I considered signing up for martial arts again. And for a show to do that, especially this, that's an achievement. So it inspired me, and we want to know if it inspired you as well. So let us know your thoughts on Cobra Kai, specifically season 1 and 2 for this, and your anticipation, your hype for season 3. Where do you think it's going to go? Which storylines are you most looking forward to picking up? Who are your favorite characters, favorite moments, anything regarding this show? Please do let us know. We want to say a big thank you to everyone that has joined us tonight as well in the comments and joined in the conversation with us. You guys are great, and we hope that you can join us on our spoiler-free discussion tomorrow. We will understand if you don't. If you don't even want any initial opinions, we'll understand it, but that will be a good one, and we promise you there will be absolutely no spoilers at all. And of course, we are winding up slowly but surely on these retro reviews on Cobra Kai and the Karate Kid films that we've done. We will be moving on to new stuff as well, and we do have a lot of content planned, and the best way to keep up to date with all of that is to go to our socials. So once again, Facebook at Cinema Savvy, Twitter at Cinema_Savvy, and if you'd like to pick up any merchandise, we do have a TeePublic link in the description down below with a couple of designs on there, so please check that out. And yeah, if we've picked up any new viewers, any new subscribers, anything to do with this, good to have you on board, and we look forward to seeing you on more videos in the future. So until the next video, everyone, take care.